Magic Management Squad. We had you again. So we're going to talk about stuff that happened this semester and stuff that we're going to take away from this semester and stuff that we think was important this semester. Lots of stuff. So we'll just kind of jump in. The thing I want to talk about the most was the self-evaluation activities that were assigned in different chapters. We didn't have them for every chapter, but for some chapters we did, some chapters we didn't. I really liked them because it kind of, I kind of roasted myself a little bit, but to a sense that was important, and like how, as you did the self-evaluations, you were able to look back in the chapter and see how to fix the things you didn't like out of the self-evaluation or change different parts of the answers that you had for your self-evaluation. So I really like that. Specifically the one we just did in chapter 13 that's due this week. It was about communication, which as a communications major, I'm a big fan of. And it makes you realize that you're not always the best listener in the world. And a lot of times you want to just jump into the conversation, or if someone comes up to you and is trying to communicate something with you, you want to assume the next thing that they're going to say. And I'm really bad at that, because I'm like, usually if someone is talking to me, I am interested in what they're saying, but I'm like, I think I'm a good listener because I'm so interested, but because I jump ahead and I try to predict what they're going to say, or I plan out the next thing I'm going to say, that makes me a bad listener. So that was interesting because it's something like I've known that I need to work on, but also something that looking back in the chapter I can work on because it helped me with that. Do you guys want to
Yeah.
go? We'll just go around, keep going.
Yeah, I agree. The self-evaluation activities were really interesting, just kind of figuring out how to be a little bit more self-aware about like how you work and how you view the world and things. I liked the one that talked about your motivation in chapter 11. So through that, I figured out that I am more motivated towards or by achievement and like affiliation rather than like what was the word that they used in the chapter? Rather than praise, I guess. So yeah, as an actor, it's kind of interesting because I think people tend to look at artists of any kind as just like wanting to be applauded and stuff, but kind of cringe at that sometimes and prefer to just do rehearsals and then go home. And that's my favorite part. But yeah, with work in my work at home team and in the theater department and things, it also applies. Just liking to do good work and keep to myself. So
yeah, I also enjoyed those self-assessments about motivation because I learned that I was motivated by the work itself and not getting to the end point or the environment. I think was one of the other options, but that I learned a lot about myself and the type of work that interests me. I just enjoy doing what I want to do, and if I enjoy that, then I'll feel achievement with it. So that made me more confident in the work that I am usually doing. Something else that I found was really helpful was chapter 7 when they're talking about delegating work, because with group work, you don't want to put all the work on one person. You want to make it evenly distributed. And as a stage management student in the theater department, we hear the word delegating all the time, where it's like one person is delegated to work with costumes, one person's delegated with props and such. So because with stage management it's a lot of work, and if that's only on one person, they can get really overwhelmed. so delegating is something that, the lesson of delegating is something that I'll take on with me for the future.
I agree with that for sure. I think we can just switch to like talking about like working in this group specifically. I think we were very fortunate, and a lot of the things that we talked about in the book with you know, giving criticism, leadership, all that stuff, like all that stuff was helpful. And in the future, I'm sure we'll use it, especially with like criticism and being able to approach conflicts. But we didn't use it this semester.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're fortunate for that, but also it helped us, or at least me, like keep in mind that like in the future, this isn't always, it's not always going to be this easy or smooth sailing with groups, which I think is good. I think.
Another part that I wanted to talk a little bit about that I thought was really interesting was the personal SWOT analysis. Just, you know, kind of looking at your strengths and your weaknesses and opportunities and threats, as the as the acronym states. But just doing kind of a detailed analysis on yourself and what you are stronger at and what you need to work on, and like where you want to go and how you can get there was really helpful. It, you know, helped me to think a little bit more critically about myself and what I want and what is going to stand in my way.
Yeah.
So especially getting into the part of our life where we're going to be graduating and or not graduating but graduating next year. It's good to know that we can kind of like reflect on ourselves and know what our options are, if that makes sense, and if we want something that's not within our options, how to get there. So
Yeah, the SWOT was the most challenging part for
Yeah.
me,
Oh,
for sure.
yeah.
Like, I think it was obviously necessary in this course, but out of everything we did this semester, by far the most challenging, which is crazy to think about because it's just about ourselves. And like, you would think, you know, yourself is the thing you know best, but that's not always, like, it's not always that easy. Like, giving advantages for myself and like thinking hard about specific parts of what I do was rough. Like I had a great time coming up with disadvantages and things that I wasn't good at, but advantages were hard for me, at least. So.
Yeah, that was probably the most challenging thing for me too, because I'm good at assessing other people, but not assessing myself. So I couldn't think of like strengths that I had or weaknesses that I had. I ended up going to other people saying like, what do you think a strength of mine is, or what do you think a weakness of mine is? And they'll be like, well, you should know because it's yourself. And I'm like, but I don't think about myself 24 hours of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do work, I'm not like, oh, I nailed it, you know, like, and here's why. So it was challenging for me too.
So much easier to have those thoughts about other people.
Yeah.
Because you know, when you're saying like, oh, that was really good, you did a good job, or oh, you really shouldn't have done that. It's hard to say that to yourself sometimes, and to be able to like accept that.
Yeah, because I think you see in other people like qualities that they have that you want as qualities of yourself.
Yeah.
So you pick those out and you notice those before, but you don't think you have those qualities, and you can't pinpoint the qualities that you have that you admire about yourself.
Yeah, and I keep hearing over and over again, like in communications and digital studies, we touch on marketing a lot because that's kind of the future. And I've heard this like at least 15 times this week. Like going into the job market, you're marketing yourself. You're not marketing like anything else. And I think we do that without realizing it, but when you do realize it, it's tough. Like when you do try to market yourself, like we can just go ahead and transition into chapter 9 about networking. It's rough because it brings you back to like that sort of SWOT activity where you network yourself every day, but when you have to write that down on paper or like think about it, it's so different. And like the appendix for chapter 9 and chapter 9 in general touched on how important it is to have that. And like they even in the appendix like put like steps for networking, which I was like, that's a lot, but like it is important to have. So doing that like before you apply for jobs and don't do what I did is important. But yeah, if you guys have anything else on chapter 9, because I know we did our video on that, but also it was like one of the chapters that stuck out most for me personally.
Networking, I think, especially in Maddie and I's theater like major, is so important because I know a lot of people who work in the theater that say that they didn't get jobs based off of job interviews. Most of them is just knowing the right people and being in the right place. So networking to know those people is super important. And we even have a class in our theater department, I think I talked about it in my blog, that's just based on networking. And we go to New York and we meet people so we can start networking within college to start getting jobs. So it's always something that people have talked to me about, but you don't realize you're networking until you like sit down and have a meeting with them. So yeah, it's very, very important.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. The last part that I really wanted to talk about really quickly was Blink, the book we read by Malcolm Gladwell, and his concept of thin slicing, which I thought was very interesting. I've read a couple of his books, and he always presents such interesting, like, kind of different ideas that people wouldn't normally think about. And with thin slicing, it's the concept of like kind of following your instincts a little bit when making decisions, and how that can be sometimes even more effective than careful analysis and lots of planning, which was striking at first because we're taught all our lives that every decision you make needs to be a very important one that you spend a lot of time thinking about, and impulsivity is wrong and you shouldn't do it. But you know, he's here telling us that our experiences and our intuition and our kind of ability to pick up on the energy of a situation and to know kind of like in our gut what's going to happen can sometimes be a lot more telling than the facts. And that was weirdly comforting to me.
Yeah. But you just have to like trust your natural instincts, like your natural human instincts. Because a lot of people, like Maddie said, a lot of people are telling you like you have to plan out every decision, like deciding a job, deciding your college, deciding your major. Like it's so you have to plan it out before you decide. But if you just have that feeling of like, yeah, I know what I want to do, I know where I want to be, that can be the most important way and the most helpful way to make a decision. And you can end up just as with the right decision, just in the same way.
Hashtag the power of thinking. As a closer here, I liked that one of our last chapters that we were assigned, aka chapter 13, was about communication, because I'm going to go there. As a communications major, I always stress the importance of it, but I think us as a group did such a good job of it that we had communication and it stopped there and we didn't have any other problems. And I think that was so important in proving, like everything in this class was so helpful but we didn't use it like in our group. Like, of course, we used it outside of this class and stuff.
We didn't need to.
We didn't need to, and I guess
We didn't need to problem solve.
Yeah.
We didn't have any problems.
I almost wish that the communications chapter was at the beginning, but I think
Yeah.
it's also important that overcoming bias was at the beginning, because it removes, like, if you have bias, you won't be able to communicate well, and so that was great to have at the beginning as well. But yeah, communication, I would just stress the importance of it throughout the whole entire semester. I don't think it was stressed enough in the book. Obviously it was stressed in like in different formats, as in like giving critique or approaching conflict, but it was just overall communication wasn't stressed enough. But
Yeah.
I think we did okay with that, so it was okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to know too that like communication isn't always just about telling people when you have a problem with something. It's
Yep.
it's like tackling it before it gets there.
Yep.
And telling people, like I used to always have this problem with my roommates last year, because like instead of just like asking people to help out with cleaning or whatever, they would just like wait and see if people would do it, and then they get mad when they didn't.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we can just tell
Yeah. Just
people
ask.
and be like, hey, can you take out the trash, or can you do
Yeah.
the dishes or something, and
Yeah.
and just approach it from a more proactive standpoint so that there's no issues at all.
Yeah.
So
I feel like with communication, people are always, kind of going off what Maddie said, always afraid to say something because they think it's going to start the conflict.
yeah,
But I think not talking about it
it
starts
so
the
much
conflict,
worse.
Yes.
because
Yeah.
then it creates a
it
bigger
sit.
tension.
Yeah.
You're like, what are they not saying?
It also causes passive aggressive behavior, which is
Ugh.
just so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And like just ask, or you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
just talk about it.
I'm really proud of some of my friends because like some of my friends
Aw.
have gotten so good at communicating this year, and like
Yeah.
like there have been instances where somebody did something that another person didn't like, and instead of like talking badly about them to our other friends, they would just go up to them straight up and say, hey, I'm going to tell you this right now because I don't want to
Yeah.
like foster these bad feelings for you, and like let's talk about it so that I don't think bad things about you.
Yeah.
And like people are great.
It does sound really scary. Like when you put it that way, like I know that's great, like in my head, but like it does like off the bat seem scary, but it's really like from experience, it
So much worth
helps. It
Yeah.
is worth it. It is. Like I know that feeling, but it's so worth it. And I think management, that's what it's all about. You just gotta communicate. You gotta know what you're doing and
care about people.
care about
Yeah.
people. Yeah, don't be Steve Jobs. I think we've learned that this semester for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'll definitely use this class for the rest of my career until I'm retired, and then I'll forget about it, and I'll be with my 12 dogs somewhere having a great time. So I think that's that.
I think we should end there.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.